Welcome friends, I'm here in the second video of the Emulation project series. So I thought I'd take a look inside and show you what I've got going on so far. If you're just joining me on this project, basically what I'm doing is building a computer that hopefully is going to emulate every console system from the Atari 2600 all the way up through about the Wii U, around that era. Beyond that, I don't think it's really practical to emulate with modern hardware and the emulators that are available so far, so I'm limiting it to that range. So inside here, basically this is a clean Windows 10 Home Premium installation. It is a licensed copy. I paid for it. What I did not do, however, is use any personal information. I did not sign into my Windows account. I just created a local account on here. And the reason for that is I am going to be experimenting with a lot of software, this emulation software, launchers and whatnot. And a lot of it is free and open source, and we all know how that tends to go. Sometimes when you download something that's free, you end up being the product. So generally when you stick with the main the official downloads, the open source community is generally pretty good about not putting bad things in open source software, but other people can create their own versions, and they can redistribute, and they can bundle it with other things, and sometimes those other things are harmful. So anyway, just to be extra safe, I did not use any personal information. This is just a purely local machine, local account. As you can see, I've already got some things installed down here at the bottom. My plan moving forward is really just to tackle one system at a time, find the best emulator for each system, and get a controller solution working. Probably my next video will be about the controller situation, because as I said, I want everything to be as authentic as possible in recreating the experience for playing these games. So for some of them it's very easy, and for some of them it's going to be more challenging. The Dreamcast is looking like it's going to be a challenge, which, by the way, the Dreamcast controller is one of my favorite. I think it's probably one of the most comfortable controllers I've ever used. But anyway, so far I've got Messin for the NES, and then BeastNES for Super Nintendo, and I've been using Project 64 for the Nintendo 64. I've been messing around with, was it Blastum, I think, for the Sega Genesis. I've had some issues with that. So far these three are working pretty well. But I'll introduce each of those one at a time. I have a dedicated video for each one. I've also been playing around with Launchbox and with RetroArch. I like Launchbox. I like the idea of having a visual interface to select games. It has its quirks that I'll have to figure out to get everything working. It does integrate with RetroArch. I'm not sure exactly how that works just yet. I haven't played around with it all that much, but I like how you can have the box art and even the cartridges. Let's see, image group, do the 3D boxes. And there's not art in here for all of them. There will be a few here and there that are missing, but you can add your own on a case-by-case basis. And that's something that I might end up doing as I approach the end of this project. It's probably going to be a long time from now. Right now I really just want to get everything working, just run through these systems one at a time. And as you can see, I've been playing around, going on a little nostalgia trip. I remember Glover. I played that game quite a bit. Banjo-Kazooie. There's a lot of them. One that I was checking out earlier today was Buck Bumble. I don't hear a lot of people talking about this game. I guess maybe it's one of those hidden gems, but I remember playing this game so much. It was so fun, and I played it again earlier today, actually. And, for the era, I mean, by modern standards, the controls are weird. Maybe I'll do a video about this game one day. But pretty much all these retro games, by modern standards, the controls are weird because if you remember the crazy N64 controller, I mean, 3D was a new thing at that time. We really hadn't figured out how to control a 3D character or, a vehicle or flight or a bumblebee for that matter. But as a flight sim, a shooter flight sim, it actually was pretty good. The controls were surprisingly well done. I played it earlier today, and at this point I'm coming from the perspective of modern controls and modern flight sims, but still I think this game holds up today. I'd really like to see a modern remake of it. But anyway, that's my rant. A lot of stuff you can do here with Launchbox. I'll probably do a video dedicated to that. What I did do was create a Google account specifically for this project. So this has its own email, its own Google account, its own, all the Google tools, the Google Sheets, which I've been using to send information back and forth from my main computer because I don't really want to log into anything on here. I just have one user profile. I'm not signed into OneDrive or anything like that. Pretty much just a bare bones installation dedicated to this project. I don't really need this AMD folder anymore. Actually, I probably do. I deleted so originally, if you remember from my first video, I had that I had the AMD, the ATI Radeon graphics card, that old, super old, ancient graphics card. And it had the AMD drivers, and there was an AMD thing, like what do you call it? Like the control center for AMD, just like NVIDIA has the NVIDIA Control Center, whatever they call it. But I uninstalled it, and I'm thinking I shouldn't have because eventually I'm going to do a dedicated build, and this is going to go back to using that old graphics card, and the NVIDIA graphics card is going to go into the new machine because that should be sufficient for what I'm going to do. But yeah, it's really about all there is so far. Next I'll probably go through and talk about the controllers, and then just one by one start hammering out these systems, getting them all working. I'll probably do several different emulators. From the research I've done, these seem to be the most accurate, and that's a thing to take note of. There's a difference. I guess I can talk a little bit about different kinds of emulation. So within the category of software emulation, which is what we're doing here, as opposed to hardware emulation, which is, using the field programmable gate arrays, which is not something that this project is going to do. This is just purely software emulation, but on two ends of the spectrum you have low-level emulation, and then you have high-level emulation. And a simplified rundown of that is with low-level emulation, you are trying to replicate the functions of the original system as accurately as possible. So basically you're taking these game files, these ROMs, and you're processing them exactly the way that the original hardware would have done. That ends up for a true experience, a truly accurate experience. So any bugs that existed in the original game on the original hardware they're gonna be present in your emulator, which I've encountered. Actually, I was playing the original Zelda on the NES, and I was noticing some slowdown on screens where there were a lot of enemies, and it's been forever since I played it on the original system, so I did a little bit of research, and it turns out that happened on the original one too. So it even, the accurate ones, the low-level emulation, that's even going to reproduce bugs in the original hardware. And then there's high-level emulation, where instead of worrying about being accurate with the way the information is handled and the files are executed, you're more interested in just reproducing the result of whatever that was. That's high-level emulation. And with modern hardware, you can do just purely low-level emulation on most of these old systems, and it'll work just fine because we have so much computing power, and really these rely more heavily on the processor than anything else, single-thread processing. And the processors that we have nowadays are just so much beyond what was available back then that you can reasonably emulate something like this on a low level, and it'll work out just fine. I mean, there's always going to be some kind of a lag, some kind of a delay. The original hardware is always going to be a little bit faster, just by the nature of it, but we can do it with modern hardware to the point where it's pretty much negligible. You're not really going to notice anything. Once I get to the closer I get to the modern era, it's going to be, I think the GPU will come more into play, and it will rely probably more on high-level emulation than trying to replicate the systems at a low level. But anyway, we're just going to take it one system at a time. I'm happy with the results I've gotten so far, and I look forward to future updates. So that is all for now. Later.